Today on the We Invested podcast, we have KM, the founder and director of First Brick Property Buyers Agency. KM, how are you doing today, my brother?
I'm great, Wesley. I'm really excited. We were just having a chat before. I've never been this excited to be on a podcast before. It's pretty
Not
cool, man. You bring so much energy, so I'm excited. I'm doing good.
Yeah, man, I'm lit right now, bro. And I'm excited for this interview too, man. This is a first for me for sure, man. Just having an international guest from Australia. It's exciting, and I'm excited to learn more about what you do and how you've built your brand and built your company. And I'm excited to get the chance to pick your brain, man.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's my first time to be on an international podcast as well. First podcast in the US. We've done quite a bit in Australia, but you know, this is pretty exciting. So I'm pretty excited to be here.
Let's go. So look, bro, before we get started, man, would you mind letting the people know how they can find you on the internet, your website, as well as social media?
Yeah, for sure. So on Insta, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, on all the socials, you can find us at First Brick Property. And then our website is firstbrick.com.au. So you got to put the .au in at the end, otherwise it won't pop up.
For sure. I mean, and you mentioned TikTok too, man. And TikTok is just growing crazy, going insane. Everybody's on TikTok. It's like the number one platform, number one app. So I mean, um, how important is it for you and your company to be on this platform and just reaching the people through this medium and through this social media outlet?
Yeah, for sure. I think when it first started, we weren't hesitant to use it. We were just unsure how to use it for our purpose. We obviously do a lot of property and real estate education, and we want to teach people how to invest in real estate and how to make money through real estate. So we weren't really sure because when TikTok first kind of became, a bit more popular, it was just people dancing and whatnot, and I'm not dancing, right? I'm not that guy that's gonna dance on on screen. So we weren't really sure how to implement it, but I listened to a lot of Gary V. He was supposed to be in Australia yesterday, but they had to cancel for some reason, and so he was just like he just kept saying, "Do it, do it, do it." And Gary Vee is a big influence of mine, and I look up to him. Some people don't like him at all. Some people love him. I think he's great. It might be a bit in your face, but um, what he talks about is legit. And so I just tried to think, he's right. If that's where the attention is, well, that's where we've got to be. And if we can, you know, it might be under 18-year-olds at the moment, but it will shift. And then, people who are older, 18 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, eventually it's going to get there. So if we get in earlier, we'll be able to build a bigger base of content and help more people. So that's kind of how we looked at TikTok. I think TikTok is still pretty new for us though, as opposed to Insta and Facebook, of course, and LinkedIn as well. But yeah, I actually enjoy the TikTok. It's interesting. It's cool.
Yeah, nah, man, I enjoy the TikTok 1000%, bro. And it's like you can get up there and just get lost. Like
Yeah.
it's so easy to stay up there for 2 hours. You're like, man, I just spent 2 hours watching TikTok videos. But just in regards to Gary V, man, I'm definitely a big Gary V fan too. Got a couple of his books, and he was like a huge inspiration for me starting to put out content and interview people and want to get on social media and be a little bit more active. But you did mention that it was, I guess, a learning curve on trying to figure out how to utilize TikTok to serve your business and what it is that you do. So how did you learn and how have you seen TikTok benefit you since you started implementing that in your marketing routine or marketing regimen?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And to be honest, I think it was more so just about getting over the fear of using a new platform. Um, Really, because what we're making the videos and whatnot on Instagram, and we're making for Facebook and YouTube anyway. And so we thought, well, we'll just put it on TikTok and see what happens. And right at the start, like our first video got like 1,000 or 2,000 views, which was pretty cool. And then everything
Nice.
got like one, and then no one was watching anything. I was like, oh, well, that's pretty crap. So we didn't post for a little bit, but then I said, oh well, just keep posting because TikTok is pretty new. The algorithm's pretty fresh. It's pretty organic, and rewards, I guess. I think what we found was TikTok just rewards your videos if people like it.
Mhm.
Whereas Instagram, I think, has been a bit developed, so it's a bit different. So we just kept posting stuff, and then a couple of videos hit, 20,000, 30,000 views. It might not sound like a lot to you guys, but when you have in Australia, it's a small population, so that's quite a lot for someone like us, especially in our industry. And so we just kept putting it out, and we didn't really do anything different. We just kept making these videos, just talking about real estate. It was just literally a video of my head talking about real estate. I said, well, might as well put it on TikTok. I think the biggest learning curve was just the getting over the barrier of fear, just to actually just jump into something different and spend a bit of time posting and understanding that world.
Exactly, bro. Nah, man. Hey, 30K, 40K views. That's incredible, bro. It's crushing mine. The most views I got on TikTok right now so far is like on one video like 85 or 84. But my goal is to just get more consistent with the TikTok because that's really the key to anything, man. Is
Yeah,
just stay consistent with what you're doing and not necessarily focus on the views, but just to do it out of the love and just and have that vision to see like, okay, maybe it's not where I wanted to be right now or today, but if I keep going, if I keep doing it, then it'll reach that mark. You know what I'm saying?
100%, 100%. You're right, and I think you kind of just got to go back to the reason why we do what we do, and whatever it is that you do. So in our scenario, it's we like to help people buy property, and invest in real estate so that they can retire earlier, and become financially free. So what do? We create content to explain to people how to do that, and then if they like it, they'll watch it. If they don't, if people are not interested there, they won't. But as long as we're just doing what we want to do and for who we want to do it, and just think about the end consumer, I guess, the person watching it. What do they want to learn? What do they want to know? And if you provide value, then the people will come. But yeah, you're right. It's all about consistency, because there's no point throwing out one video. I mean, how many videos are being uploaded to TikTok a day? I don't know
Right.
the number, but a lot. You chuck out one video, you know, it's going to get lost. So you got to really be consistent. 100%.
Exactly, bro. So I mean, we mentioned this earlier. You're from Australia, and right now you're living in a well populated city. I don't want to say the name. I don't know if you feel comfortable saying the name, but what I want to ask is, how did growing up in Australia impact your outlook on life and success?
Yeah, so I mean, happy to mention. So we're in Sydney, um, which is the unofficial capital of Australia, and I guess growing up. So I mentioned to you prior. So my parents are from Egypt, and my sisters were born in Egypt, but I was born in Sydney, in Australia, and so they had a different outlook. Egypt being, I guess well, it's not a first world country, um, at the moment, and very poor country, or definitely the opportunities don't exist like they do in Australia, and just having their perspective of everything we had to fight for, and then me growing up a bit different, where I mean, the systems here are different to the US. I mean, healthcare is free in Australia. You can go to a doctor at any time and get a free checkup. If you need surgery, you get it for free. None of this stuff you have to pay for. We do have private insurance and whatnot, and that essentially just gets you on a quicker list. But everyone will be taken care of in Australia regardless. And so all of these things were like, wow, what an opportunity. You can do whatever. The country is going to give you anything you want to thrive. And I think having the that background knowledge of what it's like in Egypt, especially as we're Christians, and in Egypt being a non-Christian country, it's very difficult sometimes, and it can that that knowledge of how it was, and then knowing how it is here in Australia, it just made you think, if you're not doing something in this climate, like, you're never going to do something. Like, we have so many opportunities. This is the time to make something of yourself. what I studied at university is different to what I end up doing, with my career and my life. And it's something I speak to my mates about. And, sometimes my mates complain, um, we pay too much taxi or, this and that. And imagine we lived in the US or Dubai or wherever. And I said, well, have a proper look at those countries, because I genuinely think Australia is the greatest country to live in on this planet. The amount of opportunities, the safety, the healthcare, there is nothing like it. So just growing up in this environment, it just gave you confidence to fail,
Mhm.
because you could just get back up. And I think that's really important, because when you have confidence that you can fail and everything's not gonna, blow up in your face, when you go for things, you go for stuff, and then it works out for you sometimes.
Exactly, bro. And I mean, I think you got the right mindset to have. It's just like you can't be afraid to fail. You can't be frozen with fear, and just hearing the pride that you have in your country. I mean, that's right, bro. You're supposed to think where I'm from is the best place ever. Like there's no
Yeah.
other country, continent, state, whatever, city that's better than mine. So I agree with that mindset 1000%. I mean, and just as far as just transitioning over to the company that you've built and created and grown up until this point, I want to ask, what is the First Brick Property Buyers Agency?
Yeah, so First Brick Property Buyers Agency, what we do is we help people buy property, we help people invest in real estate, and we take care of the entire process for those people. So Wesley, if you came to me and you said, I had X amount of money and I wanted to invest in real estate, I don't know where to buy, what to buy, or whatnot, we would run a data analysis for you, across the entire country, and work out the best locations for you to buy. Then we'll take over the negotiation, um, part of the process. We'll do the due diligence for you. We'll organize solicitors, um, you know, and pass that off to property managers. We'll take care of the entire process, so you don't have to do anything. Now, I'm pretty in the US. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the US, buyers agency is quite common. It's not, and there's lots of buyers agents, um, from my knowledge anyway. In Australia, for reference, our population of 25 million, there are about 100,000 real estate agents who sell property, or realtors is what you guys call them, I think.
Yep.
But in Australia, we only have maybe 2,000 buyers agents.
Wow.
It is a very, very niche, service, or very, unknown world. When I started the business, people didn't even know what a buyer's agent was in Australia. Like,
Yeah.
and to this day, actually, it's still quite unknown. People still don't know what a buyer's agent is. So, uh, we take care of the entire process. We help people invest in real estate so that they can retire early, they become financially free, quit their jobs. But a lot of it is also just educating people on what we do and how you can do it yourself. You don't, if you don't want to use our services and give it a go, how you can do it yourself.
So, I mean, that's really interesting because, like you said, we have a lot of realtors and real estate agents and these different companies. So why do you think it's different in Australia, meaning that there are not many buyers agencies and there's only 2,000? Why is that?
Yeah. So something people outside of Australia don't understand when it comes to Australian real estate is we love real estate.
Okay.
Aussies, we love real estate. We'll talk about real estate till kingdom come. Saturday barbecue. Couple guys standing around the barbie and we're talking about real estate.
Yeah.
You're at the beach, you're talking about real estate. On the news, talking about real estate. Everyone's talking about real estate, and we love it here in Australia. Everyone's got an opinion, but because we love it so much, and everyone's got an opinion, people like to do it themselves.
Okay.
So it just never kind of existed, um, and it was always a real estate, a seller's agency heavy industry. And there was a guy, Ben Handler, who was my mentor. He was in the US. He met a few people, found out about this thing called buyers agency, and brought it back to Australia. And it took a long time for anyone to trust him. And everyone's like, well, why would I pay you when I could do it myself? So in Australia, it was just something that we just did. It was just we buy property, we do it ourselves, and we all talk about it. Saturday at the bar, we just talk about real estate. And then so it was so strange for people to see people saying, "Well, I'm going to charge you some money for me to do it for you." And then it's just been a mindset shift, but it's definitely growing in popularity very quickly here.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. And it's just like I feel like it provides peace of mind for clients. It gives them a chance to kind of be hands off throughout the process and to focus on the other things that they have to focus on, because even though it sounds like real estate is a huge topic where you're from and where you live, with your experience and your knowledge and just working with people and really studying this field and this industry the way you have to study it in order to run a successful business, I'm sure you have a lot more experience and understanding of buying a home or buying property or buying land or whatever the case may be, because most people spend their life and they just buy one home. They have their one home and they live there for 40 years and they pass it on or whatever the case may be. But you've probably seen hundreds of, if not thousands of transactions. So you know the different situations that could come up or the different scenarios, and you just have that experience so you can walk a person through it. Like, no, I've seen this before. Let me tell you, this is how I've handled it in the past. This is how I would do it. Is that kind of like a true statement?
Yeah, 100%. You're definitely right. And something you mentioned that is interesting, that you mentioned that people will just own one property or their own home or whatnot. Of all the property investors in Australia, 90% of property investors only ever get to purchase one or two, and they stop. And the reason for that is no one they just don't know what they're doing. They don't know where to buy, and they're just guessing. A lot of the time, they're just buying in their backyard. So you live in a particular suburb, and then so you invest in that same suburb. Why? Just that's where you live. You don't know any better. Something your listeners might not know about, or they may know about Australian real estate is bloody expensive. Australian real estate is expensive, mate.
Wow.
The typical value of a property in Sydney, as we speak today, is 1.1 million.
Oh,
That is a typical value. It is very expensive.
oh,
In Melbourne, it's just under a million. In Brisbane, it's around 700,000. So it's very expensive to buy real estate. And when it's that expensive, the average income in Australia is about $80,000 a year. So you're talking almost 10 or more than 10x someone's income. So if you're not doing proper strategy planning and not really understanding where you're buying and how this fits into your strategy, most people get capped because the banks won't lend them any more money, and they'll say you can't afford any more loans. You know,
yeah,
um, no matter how much equity you can build in your property, you can't afford another loan. So
yeah,
a lot of people get capped because they don't really do research, and that's where we come in. And everything we do is based off data. We do our own data analytics in house, and it's just all numbers. We have no opinion. It's all facts, and we can actually build strategies for people where they purchase one, two, three, four, five, and so on properties, where they can actually retire early, and create a second income or a passive income without working. So yeah, 100% right. The people that use us, they don't want the headache of speaking to agents or sellers, realtors, and they don't want to do the work themselves, and they want to have their weeknights off after they come home from work, and their weekends they want to be able to go, watch their children play footy or whatever. Um, they don't want to be wasting their lives doing extra work that they might get wrong, and you don't want to get $1 million decision wrong.
exactly. I mean, you just bring that expertise, man. And I think I heard you say they want to go watch their children play footy. Is that short for football? What is that short for?
Yeah, sorry, it's the Aussie slang. So yeah, footy is short for football, but different football to the NFL, I guess, the American football. Ours is the NRL, rugby league. Is the
Nah, that's
kind of go-to sport here.
nah, that's hard. But what's that? The footy? Okay, that's too hard. But look, bro, let me ask you this: how did you get started in this industry? Like, how did you get? What was that spark or that interest that got you um involved in real estate?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's pretty. So I finished school and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I was going to study some sort of business degree. Um, I knew I always wanted to get into business. I was quite, when I was young, I was selling stuff on the driveway and, whatever. I was just trying to make money. And I didn't know why I was trying to make money. I just liked the idea of making it. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And then my best mate at the time, he said, "Hey, I'm going to go to a little town called Geelong, which is about an hour south of Melbourne, and study optometry, which you got, optometry. So, studying eyes and essentially an eye doctor." And I said to him, "Oh, yeah, I might come with you." So I applied and I got in. And so me and my best mate, we went to this small town of Geelong. At the time when we went, population of like under 100,000 people. Like, it was pretty small, especially coming from Sydney. And so we studied optometry. And I was bored out of my brains. It was not for me. But I did it because my mindset was you don't need a business degree to start a business, but you need money to start business. Usually you need money to start business. These days you probably don't even need money, but usually you need money to spend. You need to spend money to make money. And
Exactly.
so I said, okay, I'll come and do this with you. When I was studying optometry, I was running a business at the time. I was selling perfume and makeup. I had 3 jobs. I was just always, trying to build myself up somehow. And I got sent a book. I think my dad sent it to me, or he went to a seminar and they gave him a book. And my dad's not reading any books, right? So he just sent it to me. He didn't even know what the book was about. And the book was called My 4-Year-Old, the Property Investor. And it was written by a guy who essentially wrote the book to say, my 4-year-old could read this and then become a property investor. Now, I'm pretty young still. I'm still at university at that time. I read this book and it changed my mind. It changed my world. It blew my mind up. I was like, wow, this is how people create wealth consistently and have done over time for years across so many different countries. It's a proven method. And I read this book and I thought, this is what I got to do. I've got to invest in real estate. So I finished my degree, made some money while I was working as an optometrist, and then went to the bank, got a loan, bought my first property. But when I was buying my first property, I was like, where do I buy? How do I know what to invest in? And I wasn't really sure. And during that time at university, I was reading every book under the sun about real estate and listening to podcasts and going to seminars. And I was a real nerd, when it came to real estate. I was just trying to learn everything. And everyone just kept mentioning data, data, data. And I was like, well, what data do I look at? And no one actually told you what data to look at. They just said, you got to use data. So I started looking it up and trying to figure it out. And I built my own spreadsheets, my own Excel sheets on different data metrics across every suburb in Australia. So, I mean, we don't have as many suburbs as you guys, but we've got 15,000 suburbs. And so still a lot of suburbs. And I just found all this data and started updating these data sheets just so I could know how I could buy my property, which I did. And then I bought my property, but I was still interested in this data, and I just kept updating this for no reason. I wasn't buying another one. The bank wasn't giving me any more money. I've already capped out. I was 20 years old, bought my first one, and I just kept updating this data. And then some mates of mine were like, "Hey, can you help us buy a property?" I was like, "Sure, you're my mate. I'll help you out. This is my data. I'm going to use this. This is how I'm going to do it." And they, yeah, do what you need. I helped them do it. Then I helped some family members. And then one day I was sitting with one of my good mates, and he said to me, "You can get paid to do this." I said, "How do I get paid to do this? This is great fun. Who's going to pay me?" He said, "There's something called buyer's agency." And like I said, we don't know what buyer's agency is in Australia. So I looked it up, and I found Ben Handler, who runs the Buyer's Agent Institute in Australia, who brought buyer's agency to this country. I spoke to him, and his course is supposed to take 6 months or so. I did it in about 6 days because I was just so excited. I flew through it, and um, and then I quit my job and I started the business. I was just, I was just like, my mindset was, if I don't get paid, I'll figure it out. I'll go stack shelves, at the supermarket until I can get paid. I don't care. This is what I got to do. And that's how First Brick was born. That's how we got into it. Just a love for the industry and a passion. And someone said this could be your career, and I said, oh, really? Looked into it and said, yep, this is my career now.
Man, I mean that's a really interesting story, bro, and it has a lot of you showed and displayed a lot of qualities of a good and a successful entrepreneur, starting out with just being curious. Even though you were doing one thing, you were still curious about something else and took the step to actually learn and research and collect the data so you could understand where to buy, how to do it successfully, how to execute properly. Like and it sounds like you've always had a curious mind. I know that you mentioned earlier that even since you were young, you were trying to sell things and sell different products or selling makeup. It's like you've always had that hustler's mentality to just figure out how to try to make it happen, how to try to build wealth. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? What are your views on your own I guess hunger for success or like hunger for more, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I was young, I'm talking like when I was in kindergarten or first grade, second grade, I was literally on the driveway selling my toys. And I don't know why like at the time I didn't know why I was doing this. I just liked the idea of someone giving me money in exchange for what I have for them, right? So
Mhm.
I was I was doing raffles and I was selling tickets to the entire street and like making $50 and then selling a toy for like which was worth $2-3 and selling it for 50. And I was like, oh, that's great. But I wasn't doing anything with that money. I wasn't like doing this for a purpose to go and buy a bigger toy or go buy a PlayStation. I was just doing it because I was like, that's cool. I like this. And I had always liked the idea of building not an empire, but building something like I was like when I was young, I used to, build like with the blocks or the Legos. I used to build like big skyscraper buildings, and I'd be like, oh, Matt, how cool it'd be if like I was in this office up here, and I don't know what I was doing in that office, but I was just in that office, and when we were at school and we had our subjects, whether it was drama or art or something, and we were, opening to the public to come and watch our plays and stuff. My question was always, can I be in charge of trying to get sponsorships, right? And I was like, well, what student, that's 12 years old is thinking about? And I don't know. Again, I don't know why, but I was always keen on trying to make more money for wherever I was, and there was no purpose of like there was no reason to make that money. It was just something I wanted to do. I was always like,
Exactly.
let me try and build it. And then I think as I grew older, I started to understand, what an entrepreneur is and, an entrepreneurial mindset. And, I think I like the game of trying to build something and trying to say, this is my legacy or this is what I built. And I think it's just really cool. So I don't know where it came from because my dad was self-employed. He ran his own business. He was a builder. Um, my mum was a dentist when she was in Egypt, but when she came to Australia, she wasn't allowed to practice because it's different licensing. So she worked, just odd jobs. Both my sisters, who are 10 years older than me, they're teachers and risk averse, I guess, to an extent. Um, so I don't know where the entrepreneurial mindset came from because my dad was very, very anti-risk
Mhm.
as well. Uh, he took the biggest risk of his life by coming to this country and leaving everything behind. But once he got here, it was all about playing it safe. So I don't know where it came from, but it was just always innate where I was just like, I have to build stuff. And when I was working for my employers, I was so edgy. I couldn't just sit there and like I was trying to change things. And I remember writing up a case study at my optometry clinic on if we if we book patients in at different times, we can increase our conversion rate and make more sales. And this doesn't affect my life. I was just there as an optometrist. I get paid my salary, whatever. And I don't know why, but it was just always in that, how can I make more, or how can I build something? Back before optometry, during optometry, before this business, I also owned a restaurant, um,
Wow.
and that was that was an experience. And I don't know, it was just, I don't even remember what your question was. I've just gone off a tangent. So,
Nah, man.
um,
I mean, you
yeah,
you answered the question 1000%, bro. And I just think that's the beauty of like it's just the beauty in it in itself, man. It's just being able to build something from scratch, like being able to start from zero and seeing how big you can grow something, how big you can build something, and what empire can you create. So I relate to that, 1000%, bro. It's just the beauty of it when you.
yeah, that's it. It's
Exactly,
just the game. It's the fun of the
exactly,
game.
exactly, man. And it is like, and then that's another secret to it. I feel like is when you can gamify life. Like not saying that life is a game or life is a joke or anything like that, but when you can gamify and really play Monopoly with real life, that's when you really can just view it differently. Like it gives you a different perspective. Because it's like, if I can create enough streams of passive income, then I don't have to work. I won't be forced to work, but I can just do it when I want to, or I'm doing this purely based on the love of doing it. Which I mean, brings me to my next question, man. I mean, cash flow is an important part of making and having a successful investment, whether it's real estate or any other alternative asset. So I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on just cash flow and building passive streams of income and multiple revenue sources?
Yeah, 100%. It's probably, when it comes to real estate, it's one of the biggest things that we focus on with our business is finding these properties where the rent is more than that person's mortgage, and that person's loan repayments. So they've got that second income coming from that property. So essentially, the renter, the tenant, is paying you a wage on top of your own salary from your business. Um, and in Australia, it's really hard to find those because, as I mentioned, the prices are so high. And so a very big misconception in Australia is that you can't get cash flow from a property, or you can't find positive cash flow in properties. And we have something here called negative gearing, which is, if the rent is less than your mortgage, you can actually claim that loss as a deduction on your tax. So people have always done that for a long time to get tax deductions, and haven't really understood that you can find properties that are positively geared or positive cash flow and make you money. So I think it's so important from so many different aspects. One, if you want to build a portfolio in Australia, you got to be able to show two things. You got to show a deposit, which is roughly 20% of the purchase price in Australia, and you got to show cash flow that you can pay for that loan. So if you're missing the cash flow, like I mentioned before, all the equity in the world, you can have $100 million in equity. If you can't afford that loan, the bank's not going to give you the money, and you won't be able to purchase a property. So cash flow is important from that aspect. But I think as well, from a different aspect of peace of mind, letting you be able to, like, I have a lot of debt. uh, you know I have I have quite a few properties, and they all have debt associated to them, but all my properties pay for themselves, and they pay me. And so I go to sleep knowing, well, the interest rates are going up like crazy here in Australia. I don't really care, because my properties pay for themselves, and they pay me a salary. If I don't get any clients at my business, I don't really care, because my properties pay me a salary, and they pay me a wage through that cash flow, through that passive income. I think it's so important for people who want to retire early, or be financially free, or have simply just have options with what they want to do. I think it's so important to have that passive income or that cash flow, just to, I think if you have that, it takes away what we are talking about before, the fear of losing. Because I know, like I said, if I get no clients next year, 2023 is the worst year of this business. I'm still going to live, because I've got this cash flow coming through. I'm still going to be able to buy food, and go to the shops and petrol, and just live. So I think it's so important to diversify and have multiple streams of income aside from your own job, because you never know when we get a recession or there's a crisis and you're out in the street and you don't have a job anymore.
Oh, and I mean, I think it's really interesting what you said, and it just highlights the importance of what your company does by educating its clients, educating the buyers, educating the people that come across, that just come across your company, whether it's social media or however they discover you. But you mentioned that a lot of people in Australia think that it's hard to um have a rent or a payment that's higher than the actual mortgage, which which in my case or in any case over here in America would be very discouraging, for somebody to buy an investment property or a piece of real estate that the mortgage is higher than the rent payments that they will be able to charge somebody, because that's like something that's baked into the um property analytics. You want to make sure like this is a positive cash flowing property that could put money in my pocket. So to like have to approach it from a standpoint of, okay, my mortgage may be $4,000, but I can only rent it out for 2,500. That would be really discouraging. So like, I mean, just that just speaks to the importance of and the value that you bring and your company brings to let people know that, like, wait, it is possible to find something to put money in your pocket every month instead of just like being a bill or being like a liability.
Yeah, 100%. I think sometimes we're a bit backwards here in Australia, where negative cash flow, where that example of the mortgage was $4,000 and the rent was only 2,500, that 1,500 loss in Australia was just considered normal. That's just
Yeah.
that's just the price you pay to invest in real estate in Australia. That's what it
Yeah.
was set as. But we also have something called negative gearing, which is that $1,500 a month is tax deductible,
Right.
where you can actually claim it as a loss of running your business. So at the end of the year, whatever your salary was, if it was $100,000 minus that 1,500 per month, that's what you'd get taxed on. So people are like, oh well, that's okay, I'm saving tax money, but really you're just losing money, right? And people didn't really get how cash flow was important. And I guess 20 years ago in Australia, it was okay because property prices were like 300, 400,000. But so you could be losing money on a property and buy multiple properties from your salary. Now, when the average house price in Sydney is 1.1 million, you can't do that. So I think people are starting to wake up to understand the importance of cash flow. We're a
I
bit
mean,
slow.
no, it's cool, man. And I can you're great at math because you did that equation extremely fast. It's no way possible I would have knew that was a $1,500 difference. But I could tell you're great at math and very good at what you do, my brother. Um,
Thank you.
but you know, but nah, man. Jokes aside, man, I saw something interesting when I was doing my research on you. Um, when I was doing my research on you, I saw something that said, you know, time in the market, and I'm paraphrasing, but time in the market versus timing the market, which I thought was a genius, like a genius quote, I guess you could call it. But what exactly does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's thank you for saying it's genius, right? I'm going to claim that. It's we're kind of obsessed in Australia with picking the right time to buy,
Yep.
and I guess that's everywhere.
Yep.
Everyone wants to know when's the right time to buy. The number one question I get asked is when should I buy? When should I buy? Should I buy today? Should I buy next month? Should I wait till January next year?
Yep.
And everyone's trying to find the right time to buy it, and everyone's trying to find the cheapest or the lowest point to buy. And what I found over years is that the people who are trying to find the right time to buy never buy because it's never the right time to buy, right? And
Yep.
they're always trying to find the bottom, but it is actually impossible to accurately say when the bottom of a market is. So if today, like right now in Sydney or across Australia, with interest rates going up, the market's a little bit on the down in most parts. If today was the bottom of the market and the cheapest it's going to be for the next 5 years, we wouldn't know that today is the bottom of the market until
Right.
tomorrow after the market started to move. You just wouldn't know, because if today was the bottom, we'd think, well, tomorrow's going to be even lower. But then tomorrow it starts to pick up and you think, oh, I've missed the bottom. I'll wait for it to come back down. And then it doesn't come back down. So
Right.
people who are always trying to time it, firstly, they never buy anything. But the second part to that, I guess, phrase is it's about time in the market. And the reason for that is compound growth. And compound growth is the magic pill to investing, right? The longer
Yeah.
you hold something that's gaining 5%, 6%, 10% a year, whatever it is, the more money you're going to make. And I don't remember where I read this story. I think it was in the Richest Man in Babylon book, which is quite a famous book. Um, there was some wise guy, and he asked a child if he would you rather have 1 cent today doubled every day for a month, or would you rather $1 million? And he picked $1 million. And when you do the math, you realize he left about $9 million on the table.
Yeah.
But up until like day 26 of those 30 days, the $1 million was the right decision. But
Yeah.
day 27, it became 2 million. Day 28 came 4 million, then 8 million, and so on. And that is the power of compound, is that the longer you hold it, the better the results. Because if we buy something for 500 grand and it goes up 10%, that's 50 grand. So 550. And then another 10%, that's 55 grand. You've gotten the same growth percentage, but just by holding it for an extra year, you've made an extra $5,000 just by holding it. And then when you're holding it for 20 years or 30 years, all of a sudden, it's going from 1.5 to, 2 to 3. And like, that's the power of compound. So I think it's people get really bogged down on when I should buy. But the question isn't when, it's
Yeah.
where I should buy. And the time when you should buy is when you're ready. If you are financially ready to have debt, now that's the time to buy, because it's the longer you're in the market, the better it's going to be.
Exactly. No, I agree with that 1000%, my brother.
Yeah,
Hey, look, hold on for me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Hold on 1 second,
yeah,
bro. Hold on
no
1 second.
stress.
I gotta hit the bathroom real quick. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, all good.
My bad, bro. I'm gonna
No,
edit.
no
I'm gonna
stress,
edit
mate.
all that out. My fault, bro.
All
This
good.
all this water getting to me, bro.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna edit all that out. Edit all that out. Okay, we're starting back up. Okay, but one thing I want to ask you, you mentioned that interest rates are rising over in Australia and they're rising over here too in America. And they just announced a new interest rate increase today in the US. So I want to ask, how does rising interest rates impact or affect real estate purchases and real estate investments?
Yeah, good question. We just had our most recent rate increase yesterday, so it keeps on going up. Um, and I guess the idea behind it is the economy was flying way too quick during COVID. Inflation was at, it was unbelievable rates, and there was obviously global supply chain issues. We couldn't get materials in to build things. We couldn't get products in to sell stuff, and so people had to raise prices dramatically, and the demand was still there. and money was really cheap. At one point, our official interest rate was 0.1%, right? Money was for free. It was free to borrow money,
Yeah.
essentially. So interest rates have been going up. The official inflation rate at the moment in Australia is 7.3%. It'll probably hit 8% when the next data is released, before it starts to come down next year. And how it affects real estate and real estate investing. Firstly, there's the component of fear and sentiment. People get scared, so people stop buying. You have less buyers in the market, so you have less demand. So if you have less demand and the supply doesn't really change, prices go down. So real estate prices start to drop. The other side to it is borrowing power. What I could borrow from the bank reduces, because now I have to show that I can make my mortgage repayments on a 7% interest rate, as opposed to 18 months ago it was a 3% interest rate. So I can still get a mortgage, but perhaps a year and a half ago I was getting $1 million loan. Now I can borrow maybe 400,000.
Yeah.
So you might still have buyers in the market, but they're spending a lot less. So what we find is the really, really top end areas, they get affected the most and they get affected first. So, areas that are on the Sydney Harbour where properties are worth 20, 30, 40 million, they cop it the most, because already the amount of people that can buy those properties is very, very small. It's very small demand. And then when you have a 0.25% increase on interest rates, for someone on a 500 grand loan, it might not be too much. But when you're talking about a $20 mortgage, we're talking, quite a few $1,000s extra per month every time they increase the rates. So those people get affected first, and then you find that as the prices go down, it gets affected less and less, because you got more buyers in that price point. But in general, prices come down because people have less money to spend. The way it gets countered is if you have less people selling. And that's what happened during COVID. So during COVID, we had like unbelievable growth, like 30%, 40%. Some of my clients got, 75, 80% growth in 12 months, in 24 months. Like, it was unbelievable. But what happened is no one was selling and money was so cheap. So lots of people wanted to buy. So you're getting like 20, 30, 40, sometimes 100 buyers on one property in a suburb, in a location. And only one thing's going to happen when demand outweighs supply like that, and it's going to go through the roof. So that's to answer the question regarding the interest rates. Though people have less money, less people are buying, and in turn, property prices come down a bit.
No, man, and the exact same thing happened over here in America. But how do you help people cope with that fear of knowing that these interest rates are rising and money is getting more expensive to borrow? Like, how do you help people deal with it and come to terms with it?
Yeah, I think first thing we got to understand is we got to look at history. And it wasn't that long ago in Australia where interest rates were, over 12, 13, 14%. And we've just gone through a huge period of abundance where interest rates were 0.1% and money was free. So people got used to that. And I think a lot of the new generation that have come through have never known a time of high interest rates. It's always been cheap, free money. So it's just sometimes it's a matter of perspective and understanding how because history repeats itself all the time.
Exactly.
And the real estate market is a cycle. It goes up, it goes down. It's not linear. And so we look at history first and see, okay, it's going to be okay. Second part to it is, if the prices drop to 3%, if the market drops 3%, but you've made 50% over the last 3 years, you haven't lost money. You've had a small correction, right? So that's the second part to it, is like you actually haven't your property hasn't gone down in price. It's just kind of correcting because you went too high. You had hyperinflation in the market. The third part to it is like with people who want to invest and new investors who are a bit worried, and it goes back to that question about time in the market or timing. They're worried about timing it. We run data analysis across all of Australia, and we are buying in very certain specific locations Like we don't tell someone we're buying in Sydney. We'll buy in a very specific suburb of Sydney, which is its in itself its own market, and we'll buy in very specific locations. And we're finding 10 locations out of 15,000 suburbs and saying these are the best 10 for your personal situation, your personal goals, your personal finances. And these 10, I call them recession proof, COVID proof, economic proof, external proof. It doesn't matter. The amount of data we're looking at to say this location is going to go up in value, irrespective of the outside conditions, it's true, and we find that these areas continue to go up. And what we're looking for in our data is we're trying to figure out where do people want to live in this price point. Real estate is a game of emotions in Australia, and probably and I guess around the world. But in Australia, 70% of all real estate purchases are owner occupied purchases. So people buying those places to live in. So real estate is only got 30% of that market are investors. So real estate is the only investment in the world not dominated by investors. It's dominated by homeowners. So when we find locations where people want to live in and there's an emotional value to that area, regardless of the market, during COVID, the CEO of the Commonwealth Bank, which is our biggest bank, said that our market was going to crash 30%. And I was on the First Brick Property podcast, on our podcast, and I called him an idiot. And he's obviously not an idiot because he's the CEO of the biggest bank. But his rationale was more linked to the share market, stocks, where bad news occurs, people scared, they pull out, they liquidate. But everyone that owns shares is an investor. I may own shares in Coca-Cola. I don't necessarily love Coca-Cola. Or I might own shares in Apple or Microsoft. I don't have a love for it. I just want to make money. But when I buy my real estate, my property, I have a love for my property. And so during COVID, if it means I got to do Uber, if I got to get a second job, if I got to, eat out of a can for 2 years, I'm going to do whatever I can so I can hold on to my home. And when people will do that, you get a lack of supply, which everything comes down to supply and demand. You have a lack of supply, so there are huge pressures on supply. That even if there's a small amount of demand, there's even a smaller amount of supply and the prices go up. So we're looking at these areas through data where people want to live. We're trying to measure a qualitative characteristic through quantitative data. And we work it out and we say, okay, these areas, people will pay whatever to get into this area. So if we can get in, it's really hard for us to get in, but if we can get in, you don't need to worry about the interest rates. You don't need to worry about repayments. You don't need to worry about anything because the market is just going to throw this area and keep pushing it, and you're going to make money when everyone else is sleeping. And, Warren Buffett very famously said, be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. And people are fearful at the moment. So if you've got the money and you can understand how supply and demand works, and you can understand how the macroeconomics work as well as the micro, this is the time to be greedy, 100%.
Man, no, and it's incredible. I mean, it's really incredible because I can tell the deep understanding that you have for real estate and the deep understanding that you have for what it is that you do. And you're attacking it or you're looking at it and understanding it from 3 different perspectives. So as far as 1, looking at and reviewing historical data. 2, just looking at the data today, the current markets, the current trends. You understand that you and your team analyzes the current data. And then 3, you're also taking into consideration the emotional attachment, the emotional side of it, the sentimental value that people have to their homes. So it's like you're not leaving anything on the table for your clients. And you have a great way of just presenting the facts, presenting the data, presenting what it is. And it does have that common effect to where it's like, okay, now that you've given me this information, now that you've presented all of the data, I feel comfortable enough to move forward. I feel comfortable enough to buy, even though the markets are or the news is like promoting fear and fear mongering, whatever the case may be, you still give your clients the full spectrum, the full picture to move forward and make a decision that's best for them, best for their family, and best for their long-term goals. I mean, which leads me to my next question. How did you gain your business acumen? How did you gain your business IQ? Um, it's one thing to understand the data, and it's one thing to love researching it and just finding certain things in the market, but it's another thing to understand how to put it all together and effectively communicate your idea, and then to know how to actually execute your idea. So how did you learn about business and how to run a successful company?
To be honest, I'm still learning, and I don't think anyone ever really stops learning. And every time you have an interaction with a client, you learn something. And this client didn't like the way I presented this information, and they preferred it in a visual aspect rather just than a data sheet. And then you say, okay, let me try it on the next person. The next person, you get them some graphs and whatnot, and they respond really well to that. And you're like, oh, great. But they didn't like this part of, like, they didn't really feel this part of the process. So how can I fix that for that? And you're always learning. Every client, everyone is different, but you're always learning how to improve. I mean, from the property perspective, it was just obviously educating myself through books, seminars, doing my license and whatnot. From the business side of it, it's, I've read a lot of business books as well. I like to see how the richest, the most famous, the biggest, how have they done it? Because they obviously know what they're doing. And there's always a lot of commonalities. And you think, well, if they're doing this, I should be doing something similar. But in terms of, there's a lot of things like I hate and I won't figure out, and I outsource straight away, like the tax side to running our business, my accountant, because when I try and do it, I get angry and I can't figure it out. We have so many different tax things going on. You just send it off to them, right? But there are other things when it comes to customer retention, customer um, visualization, speaking to the client. I've done a lot of courses. I've spent ridiculous amounts of money on, self education in different aspects. I just got into a course at the moment about how to actually give more value to the clients than what we already are doing, even though we make people so much money. But how can I make it better? And just always trying to, and I think having an understanding and knowing that it's never perfect and you can always be better, but also having the client at the forefront of every decision. How does what I'm about to do make my client's life better or easier? If it makes it better or easier, let's try it. And if it works, we keep that. If it doesn't make their lives better or easier, it's probably not important. So we'll leave it for later. Or if we think it's going to make their lives better, we try it. And then they say, oh my God, you've made my life so much worse. Or you've added 15 steps to a process that was unnecessary. We scratch it. So there's a lot of trial and error. And it's just continuous self-learning. And I think you have to be really keen on feedback. Some people hate feedback, and it's hard sometimes when you get some, because you put a lot of effort in, right? No business owner is not putting effort in. Being a business owner is really, really hard. And I've run 3 businesses, and it's really hard, regardless of industry. And people that don't run businesses will never understand it. It's really difficult. And you have to, sometimes you put in so much effort. The last thing you want is for the client to say, I don't really like this, or maybe you could do this and it makes it better, and sometimes like, but how much effort have I put in? But just being keen to take on that feedback and actually using that feedback and not just saying, okay, thanks for your feedback and shoving it to the side, using it to improve your business. I think that's the way that we improve and we build that business acumen and understand. And then there's business side to it of like P&Ls and cash flows and all that stuff where you just kind of learn it along the way, or you watch people, or you listen to Gary Vee or Alex Hormozy or whoever it is, and they talk about it, and you figure it out from them as well.
I mean, and it just keeps coming back to this theme of constant curiosity, constantly wanting to improve and constantly wanting to better yourself and educate yourself. And I think that sets apart, the good entrepreneurs from the great entrepreneurs, to be in the middle of running a business or operating a company, but to still say, I'm going to take a course so I can learn more, to continue to just educate yourself. That's just what sets the good apart from the great. Um, but I want to ask you, man, how do you define success as an entrepreneur and as a business owner?
It's a yeah, good question. Good question. If you asked me 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I would say success is $1 million. um, and my answer is definitely different. I think true success is being happy. I think a lot of people say being happy is true success, but I will put a caveat to it, because I could be happy and broke and then, homeless and etc. And I'm happy, but that's not really living. So I will put a caveat to that, is that success is being happy with what you do, and it provides. It provides for whatever your lifestyle wants are. And if your lifestyle wants can be achieved with a $50,000 a year salary, which average in Australia, but you're happy doing that, that is more successful. You'll be more successful, or you'll feel more successful than if you made 400 grand, working late nights and hating your life. But also, if you want to drive a McLaren and live in a mansion and whatever, no stress, if you can achieve that and you're happy doing what you're doing to get there, then that's success for you. I think success is not a one dimensional thing. I don't think success is you can quantify it with a number. $1 million, you might hate yourself, and 50 grand, you might be the happiest person in the world, right? I think it's just being able to wake up and be grateful for what you've got, and then be happy doing what you're doing. And like this podcast, like, I'm so happy doing this, right? Like, because this is cool. You're a great guy. You've got so much energy. You've made my day better, and I wouldn't be able to do this if I wasn't running my business. This makes me happy. And I think success is also not just a one level thing. You can have different levels of success. So, I have my big goal and my big dream of my business, with multiple staff in different states across this country. And that would be like the ultimate level of business success. But I would still say I am successful at the moment because I've replaced my income from my old job. I'm financially free. I don't have to work. I work because I want to work. So that's success. But I also have different goals, which will lead to different successes, And I know I've gone like a real roundabout way to answer your question, but that's how I would define success is, I guess, yeah, doing what you do that makes you happy, but also by achieving what you want to achieve with your goals.
No, that's incredible, my brother. How would you like for people to remember you as well as the company that you've created?
I think I want people to remember me as a guy who, as an educator, as a teacher, and as someone who made their lives better. I can't think of many things more cool, more fun, more amazing than helping someone get out of their job that they don't like, or giving, a family an extra 50 grand, income a year so they can go on holidays, 3 or 4 times a year rather than once a year, or just showing someone how they could do it themselves and, get out of the rat race, get out of the 9 to 5. I think we remember those kinds of people. that had real positive impacts on their lives. And I want to be that kind of, that's how I would want to be remembered. I mean, like Gary Vee talks about his legacy and how he wants to be remembered over time, right? And he wants to be remembered for, all the amazing things he does. And then I watched a video, it's a bit dark, the other day, about when you die, people mourn and then they forget like 2 weeks later. That's it, or whatever, And so we shouldn't care about what people think now. And that was the point of the idea, the video. But I think people who really leave positive, just a positive mark in other people's lives, they're remembered. And so I'd like to be known as a teacher, someone who helped people just make their lives better. And if I can help more and more people make their lives better, more people remember me in a positive light.
You kind of, touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to ask, what does the future of First Brick Property Buyers Agency look like to you?
Yeah, so we have big goals, big dreams. This year we've helped about 50 people buy property. 50 people invest in real estate and get closer to their financial freedom. Next year we want to do 100, help 100 people. And I guess, in like 10 years or 5-7 years time, I actually do have this quantified, but I'll keep it to myself. But in about 7 years to 10 years time, I want to be helping 1,000 people a year. I want to be able to have staff in every state and that work for us as First Brick, and just be able to, the more staff we have, the more people we can help. I can only obviously work with so many clients at a time, and every buyer's agent we have working for us would only be able to work with so many people at a time. Otherwise quality drops and we don't provide the best, and we always provide the best. So the more staff we have, the bigger we grow, but the more people we can help. And the more people we can help, the less depressed the streets get and the less upset people are every day. And, people are happier and smiling more and more positive energy. And, there are other benefits to that. We take a load off the tax system and the economic system and the government system here in Australia. And, we don't have to worry too much about pensions. And you guys call it 401k, we call it superannuation. It just makes things better. So the big dream, the big goals, and where I see First Brick is we will be in the top 5 biggest buyers agencies in this country. We will be the #1 buyers agency in terms of free education on social media. We're on the way. There are some guys out there pumping out some solid content, which is cool. Good on them. But we're gonna, we were posting once a day. Now we're twice a day. In a couple of years we'll be like 5 times a day. Even, I just, whatever Gary Vee is doing, we'll do as many as he's doing. If he's doing 100, we'll do 100 a day. And the idea is just to be able to help more people. So that's where I see it. In 10 years, maybe we'll have a US branch and help some people in the US, but it's a very different market over there. So it works a bit differently to Australia. But yeah, just a big business with the idea of the bigger we get, the more people we can help.
Man, that's incredible. KM, thank you so much for your time today, man. And thank you for just, sharing your message of positivity, and I really get the sense and I get the vibe that, it's important to be profitable and understand the data and be #1 and be the best, which I agree with 1000%. But it also, I feel the importance that you have for helping your country and helping the people around you and having a positive impact on those around you and making their lives easier. And I could tell that you put the clients and the people first. And we need more people like you, man. We need more business owners like you. So thank you for sharing your positive mindset, and thank you for sharing your growth mindset too, man. And you just really reinforce the idea of being knowledgeable and passionate about what it is that you do, man. I feel like this was a legendary episode, legendary interview. And thank you, brother.
Thank you for letting me be on, and thank you for having a chat. And it was really exciting for me. This is one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done, genuinely. Um, we have our own podcast, and sometimes it's a bit flat. This is pretty fun. I've been guest on a few other podcasts, but genuinely, I think this is my favorite one, man. You bring a lot of energy. I'm really excited to share the episode around and hopefully bring you a few Aussie listeners as well to your podcast. And I'll definitely be going back and listening to all your other episodes because, this was great. I appreciate it.
My guy, man. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.